Hello students, during this presentation we will be going over the solution to the assignment entitled Scheduling at the Park Plaza Hotel. During this presentation we will perform various types of data analysis. We'll look at forecasting both of occupied rooms as well as total restaurant sales for the day and also by hour. We'll look at various flexible budgeting principles and how we can forecast costs and use those to control our labor. And we'll talk about various scheduling constraints that we should be taking into mind in making this particular schedule. Okay, to go ahead and get us started, let's go ahead and read the description. A Park Plaza Hotel has a restaurant called The Block, which is open evenings from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock. You are responsible for creating the cook's schedule. Because the restaurant is small and is managed by only 1 to 4 cooks on any given night, cooks are responsible for all prep and cooking on the line. Cooks will normally arrive before they are needed on the line and will perform prep. As the restaurant gets busier, cooks are called up from the prep kitchen to help on the line. Once the restaurant starts to slow down, cooks no longer needed are sent home. In creating the schedule, it is essential that the restaurant have sufficient cooks on the line during the busiest times of the restaurant. A majority of prep also needs to take place prior to the busy period of the shift. The restaurant's sales volume can fluctuate greatly, primarily due to the varying levels of occupancy at the hotel. Your task is to create a schedule that best ensures coverage, meets the scheduling guidelines, and stays within the budget guidelines. Each schedule is created and posted on the Thursday preceding the scheduled week. Okay, there are various steps that we're going to go through to complete this assignment, and we will cover those here in the solution. Those can be found here. The assignment already mentioned the scheduling guidelines. Those can be found here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is determine the day of week for each date. So if we come down here, we have the date here and we need to determine which day of the week that is. In order to do that, let's go ahead and insert a column. Okay, so here we can just put day of week. Okay, and if we'd like to, we can go ahead and merge the cell. To merge it, just come up here to the home screen. We're going to highlight the cell, the two cells that we want to merge together. We're going to hit merge and center. Now we can see that that text is now taking up both cells. Okay. There's a couple different ways that we can figure out which day of the week this is. The simplest is probably to just click on the cell here and go up to date, or go up to format and change it to long date. Okay, you can see now with all of these pound signs that, or number signs, that the contents of the cell are too big for the cell. So if we just go ahead and extend them out, it will allow us to see what is in this cell. So here we have Sunday, February 1st, or February 26th. So we're just going to write here Sunday. Okay, if we want to change this cell formatting back, we can just find a cell that has the correct formatting and use the paintbrush to change this cell back. Okay, so that's changed again to the 26th. Now we'll go ahead and shrink that column width back down. Here, what we need to do now is to go ahead and extend this down. You can see this is the 26th, so the 27th will be a Monday. There's a couple ways we can do this. If we use the fill handle here, if you notice when I hover over the corner of the cell, it changes to this black X. That's called the fill handle. I can just grab that and it'll automatically copy it. You can see that it's actually changing the date as I go down. I can just go down to the bottom of my section and let it copy that way. You'll notice that it also copied the formatting, and that's why we have this black line here. We don't really want to do that, so what we're going to do is we're going to say fill without formatting. There we go. We don't quite have enough room for our Wednesdays, so we'll just go ahead and expand the cell in order for it to fit properly. Okay, so we have done step 1 here, and we have determined the day of week for each date. Okay, next thing we're going to do is determine the pickup in occupancy from the Thursday prior to the start of the upcoming week. Okay, so to do that, we have a couple of different figures here that we need to use. Here is the amount of rooms that are sold as of the Thursday before. So if we're looking at this week right here, Sunday to Saturday, if we were to take the Thursday before this Sunday and look at our occupancy levels on each of these future dates, this is what it would have shown. Okay, if we want to see what we actually realized in occupancy when these dates actually came about, we can see that here. Okay, so this day increased occupancy by 18 or by 28 rooms. Okay, so we need to calculate that. In order to do so, we need to insert a column. Okay, so we're going to come up here and click on the column E, because that's where we want the column inserted. We're going to right click and hit insert. Okay, we can now change this description to pickup. Okay, and once again I'm going to highlight both of those and then come on over and merge the cell. Okay, to calculate the pickup, we want to take the rooms that we actually sold and subtract from that the amount that we'd sold as of the Thursday before. Okay, and this will give us the quantity of rooms that picked up between the Thursday before and the actual date. So one thing you'll notice is that this is as of the Sunday. Okay, so if you're looking at the Thursday before, you go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, this is only 3 days off from the day of arrival. Okay, if we increase though all the way here to Saturday, so we go from 3 days to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 days before. So obviously there's going to be a lot more pickup the further out we get. This is within 3 days of arrival, so there's going to be less pickup than here where we have 9 days still till arrival. Okay, so we can use the same equation to calculate pickup for each day. I'm just going to then copy it, and because I'm using relative cell referencing, meaning there's no dollar signs anywhere here, I can just go ahead and copy that down the page. So I'm going to go down to the bottom of the section. Once again, it copied the formatting, so we're going to go fill without formatting. Okay, so we can see that trend we discussed earlier, where our pickup is overall is increasing throughout the week. Okay, we can see here on Friday it kind of peaked. Saturday it looks like it was slower, so we didn't pick up as many rooms. And then we're now here into the following week. So this is a new Sunday, so this will be the Thursday prior to this Sunday. So once again, only 3 days prior to this date. This was the occupancy as of that date for these days here. Okay, so we'll see this pattern where pickup increases until we get to a new Sunday, and then it'll drop back down. Okay, so that's how we calculate pickup. Let's go back up to our instructions. So it asks us to determine the pickup in occupancy from the Thursday prior to the start of the upcoming week, and we've done that. Okay, the next step is to calculate the total restaurant sales and sales per occupied room. So in order to do that, we're going to need to insert 2 columns. So I want to put that here in front of my restaurant hourly sales. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight both of these columns, and I will right click and hit insert. You can certainly put this behind the restaurant hourly sales as well. It's fine wherever we put it. Let's say that I just automatically want this to be formatted correctly so I don't have to merge the cells. I can just take some cell that is formatted correctly how I want it. I can use the paintbrush and just copy both of those cells. Now it's copied all the formatting. Okay, so if we look up here, we've been asked to calculate the total restaurant sales and sales per occupied room. So let's go ahead and put total sales here, since here's all of our hourly sales, so we'd want our total sales to be next to it. So total sales. And then over here, we're going to calculate our sales per occupied room. Okay, you can see this went down into the next line. We could just abbreviate room, or we could expand the cell, either way. Okay, so in order to calculate the total sales, all I need to do is add up all of the hourly sales. So here, there's a couple ways I could do that. I could just hit the equal sign and then click on the first one and then add the second one and add the third one, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth cell. Okay, and that'll give me the total. Or I can just come down here and type in the formula sum and then just highlight all of these cells, close my parentheses. Okay, and that'll do the same thing. Now I'm just going to go ahead and copy this down the page. Once again, fill without formatting. Okay. You'll see because I did fill without formatting, it didn't keep this $sign out in front. If I do want to keep that, I can change it a couple ways. In this scenario, I'm just going to highlight all the cells I want to change and come up here and click on currency format. That'll add 2 zeros to the end, so I'm just going to reduce those zeros by hitting the decreased decimal sign. Okay, so here's my total sales by adding up all the hourly sales. Now what I need to do is calculate the total sales per occupied room. Okay, so to do that, I just take the total sales, and it's per occupied room, so I'm going to divide it by the number of occupied rooms. Okay, how do we know the number of occupied rooms? Well, that's what we have here, the final rooms sold. These were the number of rooms that were occupied on that particular night. Okay, so what this is saying is that on average, each room that's occupied at the hotel generates $15.34 in revenue in the restaurant. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and copy that down. We would expect that to fluctuate. On some nights, maybe sales were higher in the restaurant relative to how many guests were in the hotel. So we will see some fluctuation in this, once again, without formatting. Okay, and I'm going to change this all to currency. Okay, so now you can see here that we do have some fluctuations. Sometimes it's as high as $19 per occupied room, and sometimes it's down to 15s. So there's some fluctuation. Okay, let's go up to our instructions. So the next thing we're going to do is to graph the relationship between the total sales and the final rooms sold. Okay, so the reason we're doing this, so we have total sales here and final rooms sold here. The reason we're doing this is to show the relationship that final rooms sold has, or the effect that final rooms sold has on total sales. Okay, so let's go ahead and insert the graph. To do that, I'm going to highlight final rooms sold here. I'm going to start with my column heading, and I'm just going to click and hold down and go down to the bottom of the column. Next, I'm going to come over here to total sales. These are total restaurant sales. Okay, I've highlighted both columns, and now I'm going to come up to insert, and I'm going to do a scatter plot graph. Okay, let's format our graph a little bit, just so it's a little clear what we're looking at here. Okay, to do that, I'm going to click here and come up to format. Okay, and actually if I right click, I can hit format the axis. That'll pop up this little box over here. If I scroll down to the bottom, I can come on over to number, and it'll let me change the format. Okay, so these are dollars of sales, right? So I want to change that to a currency. I don't want it to include the zeros at the end, so number of decimal places I'm going to change from 2 to 0. Okay. We could put in here labels on our axes. To do that, we come here and we hit Chart Design, Add Chart Element, and we've got axis titles. So let's go ahead and add a vertical one first. So we could put here total restaurant sales. Put like daily restaurant sales as well. Just put some description there. Okay, also for the horizontal axis, we'll come into, once again, add chart element, axis titles, come down to primary horizontal, and here we'll put, we can put total rooms sold, rooms occupied, final rooms sold, something like that. So let's put total rooms sold. Okay. We can update our chart title as well if we want it to be a bit more descriptive. Here we were supposed to show the relationship. It says graph the relationship between total sales and final rooms sold. So we could put relationship between total sales and rooms sold. So we should probably put total restaurant sales. And total rooms sold. Okay, got a great graph here now. Let's go ahead and you can see if I hover over any area that's not occupied, these are all occupied over here. If I hover over any blank area on the graph, it'll allow me to reposition it. Okay, so I'm going to move it on down here. And let's go ahead and expand line 80 here. And we'll just fit it all inside of that line. Okay, so let's talk about what we're looking at here. You can see as the total rooms sold in the hotel increases, or as the occupancy goes up, that our sales in the restaurant increase. This shows the clear relationship that total rooms sold has with the total restaurant sales. Okay, and this is the basis for our forecasting of restaurant sales. We have a good idea of how many rooms sold we have in upcoming weeks based on our rooms on the books as of the Thursday prior to the scheduled period, and we can use that figure to then forecast our total rooms sold based on the historical pickup that we've seen. And once we've done that, we can use some averages to go ahead and calculate our estimated total restaurant sales, and we'll be doing all that here in just a moment. Okay, if you wanted to, you could right click on any of these points and you could hit Add Trend Line, and that would show the trend that we see here in this relationship. You could even take it a step forward and display the equation on the chart. Okay, and you could also display the R-squared value. Okay, the R-squared value is right here, so R-squared equals 0.95. Okay, if that was 1, then every single point would be exactly along this line. Okay, all that means is that there's a high correlation between this trend line and the points that are along, kind of along the line here. Okay, once again, an R-squared value of 1 would mean that there is a perfect correlation between the line and the data points. As you get closer and closer to an R-squared value of 0, it just means that the line really isn't representative of the data points at all. Okay, so we've got our graph showing the relationship between the total restaurant sales and the total rooms sold. Let's go on to our next step. Next, we're to calculate the average statistics for the previous 5 weeks by day of week. Okay, so we're supposed to look at how each Sunday performs on average, or how each Monday performs on average. We're supposed to look at our average statistics by day of week. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to paste the days a week. So we can come up here and we could actually just copy this whole section because we'll be reporting all these statistics. That'll kind of save us a little bit of time. So let's just copy all the way through Saturday. So you can see we've got Sunday through Saturday. I'm just going to come on over here and copy all that. Okay, and we'll scroll on down to an empty spot and let's just hit paste values. Okay, if we do that, you'll notice that all the formatting's gone. If we want to include the formatting, we can also hit paste formatting. Okay, so I pasted values, then I pasted formatting. It's copied all the same formatting. Okay, you'll notice now if I click on these that there are no longer any equations here. They're precise numbers instead. Okay. Because we're looking at averages, the date information is really irrelevant. So let's just go ahead and clear that out. Okay, and we can even blacken those cells so we know that there's nothing supposed to be there. Okay, the rest of this we need to calculate. So let's just go ahead and clear all the contents. So I highlight this whole section, I'm going to hit clear contents. Okay, now I've got this pre-formatted little table here that will allow me to show all the averages for each of these statistics. Okay, so we want to look at the average rooms sold as of the Thursday prior for each Sunday. To do that, I need to go on up. I could type in average here. Okay, and then I would just click on each of the fields that I want to take the average of. Another way to do this is to just add them all together in a parenthesis. So if I do an open parenthesis and I go find every Sunday, there's my first Sunday, and I'm going to add that to my second Sunday, then add that to my third Sunday, add that to my fourth Sunday, add that to my fifth Sunday. Okay, you can see there's 5 Sundays. So if I add those all together and then just divide it by 5, that'll just take the average of each Sunday. Okay, so on average, we have 149.6 rooms sold on Sunday as of the Thursday prior to that Sunday. Okay, because these are all relative cell references, I can just copy this equation down the sheet. Okay, so a relative cell reference, once again, is just, it means that as I copy this, it'll move down the page. If I wanted any of these to stay where they're currently at, like if I wanted this to stay here, I'd have to go in and put a $ in front of the 51. Okay, but I don't want that. I want it to float down the screen as I copy it. So as I copy the averages down here to Monday, I want it to move everything down to a Monday. Okay, so I'm happy that everything's done using relative cell references. So I'm going to go ahead and hit return, and I can copy this with the fill handle, or I can hit Control Copy or Control C and come up here to paste and hit formulas. Okay, now let's go ahead and test one of these. So we're looking at a Wednesday. So we want to make sure that all these are also looking at Wednesday. Okay, and we can see there we have all the Wednesdays. Okay. Next thing we need to do is do the same for final rooms sold. Okay. We could go through the same process of calculating those individually and then copying it. Or because we're just one column over and everything's in the same spot relatively, we can just go ahead and use the fill handle and pull that on over. Okay, and that just copied it over to the right. So now if I come up here, I can see that everything did as it was supposed to, and it all moved over one column. Now we're here in column D. Now I'll go ahead and copy that down without formatting. Okay, now I'm ready to calculate my average pickup. Okay, so to each of these we could change the description a little bit and change them to average rooms sold as of Thursday before, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and do that so that we remember that these are all averages. Okay, it looks like some of these might have squeezed down to the next line, so we can go ahead and expand that if needed. Another thing we could do is abbreviate them, so we could change this to thir and this to oc. Okay, so if we want to do that, okay, it's still not going, so we could change this to RMS, do little things to abbreviate. Okay, and we can drop that back down if we'd like, or you can just leave it expanded. So now we're ready to calculate our average pickup. Once again, that's found by taking the final rooms sold figure and subtracting from it the average rooms sold as of the Thursday before. Okay, we have 19.4 here, and we can go ahead and copy that down. One thing we could do as well is round all these figures. Our average pickup, we can look at it in the form of a decimal point, but if we wanted to, we could also round that figure as well. So let's go ahead and round it so we can show how to do that. So we're going to type in round, and we'll put an open parenthesis, and you can see it's asking what number it would like us to round. And we've put our equation in there, so that's great. But we also need to tell it how many decimal points we want it to round to. So if I want it to be rounded to an even integer, then I'm going to just put 0. Okay, if I wanted it to be rounded to the 10th decimal point, then I'd put a 1. Okay, if I wanted it to be rounded to the 100th, I would put a 2. Okay, conversely, you can also, when you're using round, you can also tell it to round to the nearest tens or nearest hundreds. In that case, you would just use a negative number. So if I did, for instance, -1, it'll round it to the nearest tens. So you can see it's now 30. Okay, but let's go ahead and just put it as 0. Okay, and it rounded it to 29, and we can just copy that down. Okay. Now we're ready to calculate our average sales per occupied room. Okay, this can be done the same way. There's something that should be said here about weighted averages versus simple averages. If I just simply take the average of all these figures up here above, it won't take into account the sales volume for each date. Or the number of rooms sold for each date. So rather than do that and just take a simple average, I'm going to calculate the average sales per occupied room once I have using the average total sales and the average number of rooms sold. Okay, so in order to do that then, I need to first calculate the average total sales. So last time I just added them all together and divided by 5. Let's go ahead and use the average function this time. So average. Okay, I'm going to go up here to Sunday. I'm going to click on it, and I'll hit comma, come back down to Sunday here, and hit a comma, and then the other Sunday here, comma, this one here, and our last one here. I could have also just copied the formula from one of the other columns as well. Okay, that I don't need to put in divided by 5 or anything because it's already taken the average. Okay, now I'm going to copy this down and change it to fill without formatting. Okay, now I've got my average total sales. So now if I just go ahead and calculate the average sales per occupied room, I can do that by taking the average total sales and just dividing that by the average final room sold. Okay, so on average, for every room that's occupied on a Sunday, those rooms will generate $16.06 inside the restaurant. That's not the check average at all. The check average is much higher because only a fraction of the patrons of the hotel end up going and using the restaurant. So maybe the check average per table is like $80, $90, $100. But because only, let's say, 20% of the rooms at the hotel go and eat in the restaurant, this figure is much lower. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and copy that down. And here we can see our average sales per occupied room by each day of the week. Okay, next we want to calculate our average restaurant hourly sales. We can just do this the exact same way. If we hit Control C, copy, we can highlight all these cells here. And now we'll just come over here to paste formulas. Okay, and now I'm just going to drag that down and once again change it to fill without formatting. Okay, and here now we have our average sales by the hour for each of these days. Okay, so we've copied all of our statistics and calculated all the averages. So if we come up here, we went ahead and calculated the average statistics for the previous 5 weeks by day of the week. And we did that by day of the week because we looked at each day here. Okay, next thing we need to do is to determine the distribution of hourly dinner sales by day of the week. Okay, in order to do that, let's go ahead and just copy this section, since we're going to be reporting it in the same size area. And let's just go on over here and paste values. And then paste formatting. Okay, so what's the distribution? Well, we want to know out of all the sales that occur during this particular day or this shift, how many of them happen between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock or in the 7 o'clock hour. What percentage of them take place in the 7 o'clock hour? Okay, so that's what we're trying to calculate here. In order to do that, we need to use some absolute cell referencing. So what we're going to do is we're going to click or type equals here, and we're going to take the sales that occur in this hour on average, so $216, and we're going to divide that by the amount of sales that take place over the entire day on average. Okay, and we can hit enter here, and it'll be a number smaller than 1, closer to 0, okay, because it's a percentage, right? So we're going to go ahead and change that to a percentage. So on average, over the course of an entire shift from 5 to 11 o'clock p.m., 8% of the sales are taking place between 5 and 6 p.m. Okay, that's what that's telling us. Now we want to go ahead and copy this same equation, but what we need to do first is tell it to keep this column reference static, right? So as I pull this to the right, I want this blue box to move over to the right so that it calculates this figure here using the 501 instead of the 216. But I want to keep the total the same. I don't want this box moving over to the right. I need it to stay on this cell here. So if I look at the cell reference, it's G84. Okay, so we need to change G84 to a fixed cell reference or an absolute cell reference. Okay, so if I come up here, I've got G and I've got 84. G refers to the column, 84 refers to the row. So as I go over to the right, I want it to keep in column G. So I'm going to put a $ in front of column G. That tells it that I want it to stay on column G. At some point, I'm going to copy it down and do the same thing for the remainder of these rows. So I don't want it to stay on row 84. I want it to go ahead and go down once I'm ready to go down. So the only absolute cell reference we need here is in front of the G. Okay. Now, as I copy it over, let's go ahead and test it. We'll come in here to the 7 o'clock. Okay, this should now, sometimes it won't highlight it for whatever reason unless you click up here in the bar. Okay, now we can see here that this moved over to the 7 o'clock hour, but we kept this reference in the denominator on the average total sales, which is exactly what we want to have happen. Okay, one thing you can do here as well is check your work just by verifying that all these add up to 100%. So if we just hit equal sum, highlight all these, that should equal 100%. So looks like we're good. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and just highlight all of these cells, and I'm going to use the fill handle and pull it down and copy that same equation. Okay, and if we look over here now, it did move down correctly. Okay, so we're not up on this row anymore. It did move down where it was supposed to. Okay, my formatting's a little bit messed up, so I can fix that just by coming over here and clicking all borders to just change them back to normal width borders, and then I can put my heavy line or thick border around it. Okay, some of you might not care that much about it. When I'm presenting information to people, I like to keep it neat and concise. Okay, so now we have our distribution created. Okay, we can see how sales vary by hour. So you can see sales are peaking here kind of in the 7 o'clock hour on average. There are some instances where they're peaking in the 8 o'clock hour. Okay, so we've gone ahead and created that distribution. So determine distribution for hourly dinner sales by day of the week. Check, we're done with that. Now we're ready to forecast the final rooms sold based on the occupancy levels as of the Thursday before and average pickup. Okay, before we do that though, let's just go ahead and take a little look at how this distribution looks graphically. Okay, if I want to do that, I need to include the column headings. Okay, so for the column, it's here. Here's my different times, and I need to include some kind of a row heading. So I'm organizing these all by day of the week. So let's go ahead and include the day of the week. Okay, one thing I'm noticing here is I've got two different rows here that have different data in them, but because this cell is combined, when I try to highlight just the hours here, it's not going to work to insert my graph. Okay, the number of rows selected here needs to be equal to the number of rows selected here, and because when I click on this, it's a merged cell, it's including row 82, and I don't want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and separate this. So if I come up here to merge and center, if I click it, it'll just automatically unmerge it, or I can go in here and hit unmerge cells. Okay, so we can put this day of week, we could just write it down in the bottom. It's really not even necessary that it's there, so that's all right. Okay, now we can highlight this column here. Okay, these 8 rows, and now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to highlight these rows as well. Okay, once again I do that by holding down the control key, and then I can highlight 2 sections at a time. So this section's still highlighted, well, this section is as well. Okay, now I'm going to come on over to insert, and I'm going to insert, instead of a scatter plot, let's go ahead and do a bar chart. We'll just do a clustered bar or clustered column. Okay, So what is this showing? Well, we have our distribution metric here on the left. Okay, we can see 35% up here. Once again, we can change that. So if we come here and click on it, okay, we can change the formatting on it. So if I click here on the chart or the axis options, I can click number and change it to a percentage. Okay, I don't need all those zeros on the right of the decimal point, so I'll just go ahead and change the decimal places here to 0. And oh, it's not updating. Okay, we'll hit percentage again. There we go. It took. Okay, so what are we looking at? Well, during the 5 o'clock hour, by each day of the week, here's how sales did. Okay, we can see that those sales are increasing, and they kind of reach their peak here during the 7 o'clock hour and the 8 o'clock hour, and then they decline. And this is what you typically see in restaurants, right? During the beginning of dinner, sales are usually low, but then they kind of peak during the middle of the dinner meal period. Okay, since we already have a chart up here, let's just go ahead and put this one next to it. Okay, and we could go ahead and change the chart title to average. Well, here we should have actually changed this to something like distribution of restaurant hourly sales. So let's go ahead and change that first. So that changed that to distribution of restaurant hourly sales. Okay, let's go ahead and change the chart title as well. Okay, so we've got two great graphs here. This one shows the relationship between total restaurant sales and total rooms sold. As rooms sold increases, we would expect total restaurant sales to increase. This one shows us how the sales are taking place on an hourly basis. Okay. Next, we're going to forecast the final rooms sold based on occupancy levels as of Thursday. As of the Thursday before and average pickup. Okay, so we're going to come down here. We have our rooms sold as of the Thursday before right here. Okay, we can see those have already been recorded. Okay, we're using the 9th of April here. You can see here that our data goes up through the 1st of April, and we're currently in the week between those two dates. Okay, so we don't have historical data for the week that we are currently in, so we're going to use the week immediately preceding the week that we're currently in. Okay, we could go ahead and put which day of the week these are. So if we come up here and hit day of the week, copy that same format. Let me show you another way to determine which day of the week it is. We can just type in a formula here that says weekday, and then we just click on the cell here that we want to know which weekday that is. And if it returns a 1, that's a Sunday. If it returns a 2, that's a Monday, and so on and so forth. So this is already pre-formatted to be a date, so let's change that momentarily to a number. Okay, and it gave us a 1. That means it's a Sunday. Okay, so we know this is a Sunday, so let's just change it to Sunday. Once again, we can just copy that down. Okay, and we can put our black line around it again. Okay, now let's go ahead and copy the rest from up above here of our statistics. So we already have the date, the day of the week, and the rooms sold as of the Thursday before. So let's just go ahead and copy all these section headers so that we include the same information. Okay. So now we need to change all these. They're not the actuals. This is the actual number of rooms sold, so we can just as of the Thursday before, so we can leave that. Now we're going to be forecasting, so we need to change these to forecasted final rooms sold. Okay, forecasted pickup. Okay, forecasted sales per occupied room and forecasted total sales. And we'll change this as well, forecasted restaurant hourly sales. Okay, looks like we need to expand this one just a bit to help it fit. Okay. We could also just copy the formatting from here since we know this formatting is correct. We just highlight this whole section and hit Control Copy. We'll select this area here and paste, formatting. Okay. Now we're ready to calculate each of these. Okay, in order to calculate the forecasted final rooms sold, we need to add the rooms sold as of the Thursday before to the forecasted pickup amount. The forecasted pickup amount we're just going to base on our average amount that we have pickup. Okay, so if we just hit an equal sign and then click on this average pickup, okay, it'll just go ahead and reference to this cell that's right up here. We can just copy that down. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is now put in our forecasted final rooms sold. Okay, I don't anticipate that there will be a scenario where this could go in excess of the total number of rooms that we have in the hotel, which is 355. But if this was a different week that we were forecasting, that could very well be the case. So something we need to do here is put in an equation that says min, okay? And by doing that, I'm telling it that I want to take the minimum of either the 355 rooms that I have available to sell or this number that I have sold as of the Thursday before plus the forecasted pickup. Okay? That way, if the forecasted pickup, if it's a significant number and I already have a lot of rooms on the books, it might be that I don't have room in the hotel to take all that demand, and it would go in excess of 355 rooms. So this, by putting in min and putting in this 355 here, it will take the minimum of either this forecasted amount or 355. It'll ensure that we don't go over 355 rooms. Okay, we'll just copy that down. You can see here we're well below 355 for this particular week. Okay, so we've got our forecasted pickup, which in this case is just our average pickup. That's why we did this whole process. One of the reasons why was to get this average pickup figure that we can then use right here. Okay, next we need to calculate our forecasted sales. Okay, we want this to be based on our number of rooms sold and our forecasted sales per occupied room. Let's change this to OC room. Okay, our forecasted sales per occupied room, once again, we're just going to use our average sales per occupied room. Fill without formatting. Okay, so these two figures came down from up above. Okay, we're going to now calculate our forecasted total sales by taking our forecasted final rooms sold and multiplying it by our forecasted sales per occupied room. Okay, if we just use the averages up here, that would not take into account the number of rooms we have on the books. Okay, so that's why we came up with this metric earlier of forecasted sales per occupied room. So once again, we're going to take our forecasted final rooms sold and multiply that by our forecasted sales per occupied room. Okay, and we're just going to copy that on down. Okay, the next thing we need to do is to determine the forecasted restaurant hourly sales. Okay, we have our total sales here, and we have our distribution over here. Remember, this all adds up to 100%. So because it adds up to 100%, I can multiply each of these figures, so 8%, by my forecasted total sales for this particular day, and that means that 8% of these sales are expected to take place between 5 and 6 o'clock p.m. Okay, so real easy calculation here. We just take our forecasted total sales and multiply it by the 8% here. Okay, once again, I'm going to have to do some relative and absolute cell referencing. Okay, I want, as I move over to the right in copying, I want this to move to the right, but I want this figure to stay on forecasted total sales. As I move down, I want them both to move down. So I'm going to go ahead and put a $sign in front of G. Okay, because I want the column to stay fixed, but I want the row, which is 97, to move down. So I'm only putting the $sign in front of the G. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of the decimal places there. Just hide them. Now we're going to copy it over. Okay, fill without formatting, and then down, and fill without formatting. Okay, I've lost my bottom line here, so I'm just going to go ahead and put a thick line around it all. Okay, now I have my forecasted restaurant hourly sales, and I have all of my other metrics as well. So I am sitting in good shape here. Okay, let's go up and see what else is required. So we forecasted the final rooms sold based on the occupancy levels of the Thursday before and average pickup, and we also went ahead and forecasted the total and hourly sales for the restaurant. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is determine the scheduling parameters given the daily hourly sales and the scheduling parameters, and we're going to include that on a day-by-day basis. Okay, so we're going to come down here, and we want to come up with scheduling parameters. So really all we need right here is how many people we need on for each hour. That's what we're trying to figure out. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this section here and paste it down below. Let's give ourselves a little bit more space. Okay, you can see all these equations are not working out. We're just going to clear them out anyways. So I'm going to hit clear contents. Okay, and I'm going to change these all from currency to a number with no zeros. Let's go ahead and put a black dark line around all that. Okay, so what we're doing here is we want to know how many cooks we need on in order to, how many line cooks we need on in order to have enough staffing for the restaurant. Okay, so we need to change this. This isn't hourly sales anymore. We need to change our description here. Okay, up here it says that we want scheduling parameters. Okay, so we could put this as, this is just for the line cooks, so we could put line cook scheduling parameters. Okay, and you should have read over all of these scheduling guidelines, and you should be familiar with what that's talking about. So we have both prep and line cooks, and we have some other shifts that need to be covered. We need to have somebody come in from 3 to 5. We need to have somebody stay to close. Okay, so what we're first doing is just determining when we need, how many line cooks we need on hand. Okay, another parameter that was given was that a line cook should be added for every $500 in hourly sales. Okay, so if we, right here we have our forecast, and we should have a second line cook anytime that sales are in excess of $500. Okay, so you can see here, they're only $144 here, so we only need one line cook, so we can put a 1 here. They're $333 here, so we still just need one line cook. Okay, and we could do that manually, but if we ever updated any of this information, we would want this to update automatically, and plus it's tedious to go in and manually calculate it, and we could have errors. So what we're going to do instead is have Excel calculate it for us. Okay. In order to do that, we remember as soon as we pass that $500 threshold, we want to add another cook. Okay, so if we use round up, we can then just take this figure and divide it by 500. Okay, and because that this 144 is smaller than 500, it's going to be divided by 500, and that's going to be a number that's now smaller than 1, so it'll round up to 1. As soon as this passes 500, let's say it was 501, it's now greater than the 500 in the denominator, and it'll now round up to 2 cooks. Okay, so that's doing exactly what we want it to. The only other thing we need to tell it is how many digits to round to. Well, we can't have a fraction of a cook, right? We need to have whole cooks, so we're just going to leave that at 0 because we don't want to show any decimal points. Okay. Now I can just copy this on over, okay, without formatting. And now if you notice here, we don't need a second cook until we get up above $500 in sales. Okay, and you can see that's happened here. But then as soon as the 8 o'clock hour rolls around, we're back down to just one cook, which is here. Okay, we can just go ahead, because we're using relative cell referencing, we can just go ahead and copy that all the way down. Okay, so a couple observations here. You'll notice that on this Monday, we should actually copy the days of the week so you know what we're looking at. Okay, let's go ahead and put those here. Okay, so by day of the week, on Monday, we need 2 cooks, but we only need them to overlap between 7 and 8 o'clock. Or I'm sorry, on Sunday. On Sunday, we need 2 cooks, but we only need them to overlap during the 7 to 8 o'clock hour. On Monday, though, we need much more overlap. Okay, we need the cooks to overlap between 6 and 10 o'clock. Okay, this is 9 o'clock here, but this means we need 2 cooks through the 9 o'clock hour, so we need them all the way till 10 o'clock. Okay, the busiest day we can see from sales volume here, really it's pretty much a toss-up between Tuesday and Wednesday. They're both about the same amount of volume. Okay. So Tuesday and Wednesday are both pretty busy. We need 3 cooks at one point, and we've got that here. Okay, the next thing we need to do is calculate the number of prep hours. Okay, so we can just copy the formatting here and put prep hours. So here we have the number of hours we need by each, or the number of cooks we need by each hour. Now we just need to know, in general, the total amount of prep hours we need to schedule. Okay, that was also given in the case or the assignment assumptions. Okay. It says that prep hours are calculated by dividing the total daily sales by $500 and rounding. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and copy the formatting. Let's do it from here. Okay, so once again, we're just going to take the total forecasted sales and divide it by 500. Okay, what we want to have happen though is we want to round it. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to put round in the formula and then put a comma, comma, and then 0. So it'll round it to the nearest number. Okay, we're not rounding up, we're not rounding down, we're just rounding to the average number of hours as the assignment stated. Okay, this is showing a dollar figure. We want that to be a numerical figure, so let's change it to number, get rid of the zeros. We can just copy that down. Okay, if I hit fill without formatting, it's going to leave them as the dollars, so I'll just need to go in here and change those to number as well. Okay, so our schedule is starting to come together. We know how many prep hours we need to schedule each day. We know how many cooks we need to have on for each hour. Okay. This also tells us the quantity of labor needed for the line as well. So we need 1 hour of labor here, we need 1 hour of labor here, we need 2 hours of labor here. So you can see it's already creating our scheduling parameters. We're already able to calculate the total. Okay, so let's go ahead over here and just put the total in. Okay, and we can just copy the formatting of the cell down below. Okay, in order to calculate the total, there were a couple more assumptions given in the case, but let's go ahead first and just add the prep hours to all of these other hours. Okay, so I can just keep on putting plus, 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 or I can just add it all together using sum. Okay, highlight all those. Okay, but to this figure, I also need to add in some of the parameters given in the case. So one thing you'll notice is that we need to have one cook here between 3 and 5 o'clock in order to calculate production, turn on equipment, set up the line, and perform the line check. Okay, these hours are not included in the line or prep responsibilities, so they need to be added here. So somebody here from 3 to 5, that's 2 hours, so we need to add 2. Okay, we also need somebody to close. So the restaurant closes at 11. Okay, and on average, it's saying that they need a half hour to close. If somebody walked in right at 11, then of course they would need to stay later. But it's telling us on average, the cooks are able to get out of there by 11:30 with all the pre-close that they perform. Okay, so we just need to add then a half hour. Okay, so this is all measured in hours, so we just need to put 0.5 hours. Okay, this is rounding, so we want it to show decimal points here. Okay, so I just extended out the decimal point by clicking on this little box here. Okay, so now we have our prep, or it says prep hours. We want to just change that to total hours. Okay, and we can now just copy that on down. And we'll need to extend all the decimal points. Okay, and this is how much labor we will schedule each of these days. Okay, if we want to know the total labor, we can just come up here and hit sum. Okay, another way to do that, just so you're aware, we could also just click here and hit this sum button, and it will come up with what it thinks should be added together, which in this case is correct. We can just hit enter or return. Okay, let's go ahead and center that and put a box around it. Okay, this is the total labor. Okay, so now we have our scheduling parameters. We know how much labor we need to schedule each day. Okay. Next it says to create a schedule using the availability and scheduling guidelines. Okay, first thing I want to do is understand exactly what I need to schedule. So let's go ahead and create some more guidelines that we can then use to create the schedule. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's come in here and put shift 1, shift 2, and shift 3. The most we get up to is 3 shifts. Okay, we're going to do this for each day of the week. So my first shift, remember I've got to have somebody come in at 3 o'clock, and I need to have all these prep hours, but let's just go ahead and ignore that for the time being. Let's just focus on when I need my line cooks in, because that will kind of determine how we treat the prep hours, and you'll see how that works here in a minute. Okay, so I need to have my first line cook come in from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Okay, they need to stay through this 7 o'clock hour, so it's really till 8 o'clock. Okay, so my first shift is going to be from 5 to 8. Okay, we don't want to change that to date. So let's put 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay. Now my second shift is coming in at 7, or we need them up on the line by 7 o'clock, and they're going to stay all the way through 11 o'clock. So we can put here 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Okay, and I don't have a third shift this day. Now we just go down and do the same thing for Monday. So once again, they need to be here by 5. So 5 p.m. to, okay, and you'll notice that they need to stay all the way through the 8 o'clock hour, so to 9 p.m. My second shift needs to be here by 6, right? That's when I go up to 2 people. So I need somebody here by 6. So I put 6 p.m. to, they need to stay through the 10 o'clock hour, so till 11 p.m. Okay, now I'm on to Tuesday, so 5 p.m. to, okay, and I need them to stay all the way through until my third person is no longer needed. Okay, so I'm increasing here. I need to keep them on, okay, and all of a sudden I go down to 2. Okay, so the first one in is going to be the first one to leave. So that means they need to stay through the 8 o'clock hour. That means till 9 p.m. Okay, my second shift arrives at 6 o'clock, so 6 p.m. Okay, and they leave once I go down to 1 cook. Okay, so I have 3 cooks here, or I'm sorry, 2 cooks here. We go up to a third cook. We'll add that here in a minute. But once I go all the way down to 1 cook, then I'll get rid of them. Okay, so my first cook left here at the end of the 8 o'clock hour. My second cook is leaving at the end of the 9 o'clock hour. Okay, so 10 o'clock. Now I have this third shift. Okay, my third cook needs to be there by 7 o'clock p.m. Okay, and they stay all the way through close. So to 11 p.m. Okay, you'll notice that Tuesday is the exact same thing as Wednesday, so I can just copy this and paste it. Thursday, okay, is new, so let's go ahead and do that. 5 p.m. to, okay, so I get my second cook on. They stay all the way through the 8 o'clock hour, so to 9 p.m. My second cook comes in at 6 o'clock. Okay, and they stay through till close. Okay, on Friday, it is a little bit different. We actually have more demand in that 9 o'clock hour on Fridays and Saturdays. So our first cook is in at 5 p.m. and they are staying on until through the 9 o'clock hour, so to 10 p.m. Okay, and the second cook needs to be here on the line by 6 o'clock, so 6 p.m. And they are going to stay through till close. Okay, and you can see that these are actually the same, right? So I can just copy that, paste it. Okay, so here's my scheduling parameters. Now I just need to take into account the number of prep hours. So let's go ahead and copy those down here. Let's just copy the hours. Okay, I pasted it. It copied all the equations. Let's just paste values instead. Okay, and we'll go ahead and format it the same. So I used my painter and I copied the formatting. And I'm going to put prep hours. Okay, so I need to add these 4 hours to these 2 times here. Okay, we'll do that here in a minute. I need to add these 7 hours to these 2 times here. Okay, also, once again, I need to add 2 hours to this individual who's opening the restaurant. The first shift is always the one that's opening up the restaurant. Okay, so we need to have them in actually by 3, and then the last shift, which is here and here, needs to stay till 11:30. Okay, I've got my line cook hours here, so now I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to go on over to my schedule, and I'm going to paste it. Okay. One thing you'll notice here is we have the days here, but we have the days are organized by row here, but they're organized by column over here. Okay, that's just fine. If you wanted to, you could also transpose it. So if I highlight all this, I can copy it. Okay, so if I right click and hit copy, when I come here to paste, I could hit paste special, and I could paste values and transpose. Okay, so values and transpose. Okay, that will change it to an orientation that we're more used to looking at. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that, and we'll just delete all this and move our rows up. Okay, let's go ahead and expand all these to fit. And we'll shrink this down so we fit on our screen. Okay, we'll hide some columns as we move on over. So here we have Sunday. We have 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is using the existing scheduling template that this particular restaurant has been using. Okay, so one of the parameters of the assignment was that only the 2 individuals with asterisks next to their names can open the restaurant. Okay, so this blacked out cell means that these employees are not available these days. Okay, so the only person that can open on this particular day is Lori. So we need her to work this first shift, so shift 1, right, from 5 to 8 p.m. Okay, let's start by just going ahead and adding in the 2 hours prior, though. Okay, so we need her to be here at 3 because she needs to arrive 2 hours early to open the restaurant. Okay, so if I just hit 3 space P, it'll know it's 3 p.m. Okay, and I'll just put a little 2 there. Okay, and it shows that she's out at 8 p.m. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this for all my line shifts, and then we'll go back in after and look where everybody's at and look what times they're arriving at and decide how to split up these prep hours. Okay, so let's just go ahead and put all these in quick. So 5 p.m. once again was moved up to 3. This 11 p.m. needs to be moved back to 11:30. So 7p to 11:30p. Okay, and now we'll do Monday. So we want to keep people's shifts together, so let's just keep on going here with Lori. Okay, and once again we'll have her come in at 3, except now she's going to stay till 9. So 3 p.m. Okay, and on Tuesday, same thing, 3 to 9. Looks like I'm not quite wide enough there. Or the 2's not working. There we go. So she's working the same shift, so I can just paste that here. 3 to 9. Okay, 3 to 9 once again here on Wednesday. All right, Gordon is our lead cook, so we really want him opening as much as possible. So rather than have Lori work here, we're going to go ahead and have Gordon start working. So 3 to 9 on Wednesday. Okay, I'm going to paste it. I'm going to paste the values, okay, because I have a shaded cell here. Okay, so let's see what other 5 to 9 shifts we need. So we need them on Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, so we can just copy Wednesday to Thursday. Friday goes to 10. So we can still paste it. We just need to change this to 10 p.m. Okay, we can copy that there too. Okay. One thing you'll notice is we really have no idea how many hours each of these employees are working, so it would be nice to be able to calculate that. So let's go ahead and insert a column here. Okay, clear the formatting there. And let's go ahead and calculate how many hours they're working. So in order to do that, we need to subtract the time they're leaving, or subtract the time they arrive from the time that they left. That'll give us how long they worked on that particular day, and we need to do the same thing for each of these days and then add it all together. So rather than do this only for the days he's working, I want to do it for the whole week. That way if I change the schedule, I don't have to come over here and update the total hours. Okay, so I'm going to even do it for Sunday here so I can copy it down, even though I know he won't be working on Sunday. So I'm going to do a parenthesis, and I'm going to do the ending amount minus the beginning amount. Okay, I'm going to close my parentheses, and then I'm going to add the ending amount minus the beginning amount here. Okay, I can put parentheses around that. Because they're all adding and subtracting, you really don't have to put the parentheses in. I usually do it to kind of keep everything straight. Okay, so parenthesis, ending minus beginning, ending minus beginning, ending minus the beginning, ending minus the beginning, and last one, ending minus the beginning. This is a bit tedious, but we only have to do it once. Okay, if I go ahead and hit enter, well, let's just see what it does. It's going to show it in days. Okay, and it's showing a time too, which isn't that helpful. So let's go ahead and change this to a number. Okay, so this individual is working 1.08 days. Okay, so we need to convert that into hours. Okay, there are 24 hours in the day, so we just need to multiply all this by 24. So I need to put it all in parentheses and multiply it by 24 hours to convert it into hours. Okay, so far we've scheduled Gordon 26 hours. We can just copy that down and see how much we've scheduled the other employees. Okay, so we've got all of our opening shifts scheduled. Everybody's here at 3. Now we're starting our closing shifts, or our second shift. So 7 to 11, we've changed that to 11:30. Next we need 6 p.m. to 11:30. So 6. Okay, and we can just now go over to 6 to 10. Okay, that's not a closing shift, so we don't do to 11:30. So 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Okay, we can copy this over here. You'll notice I'm just kind of putting the times in. We can adjust it once we get everything in here. Once we know all the shifts we need to have work, we can kind of move them around. So we've got our Tuesday and Wednesday second shifts in. Now we're back to the 11 p.m. So 6 to 11 p.m. All 3 of these last days are. So let's do 6 to 11 p.m. and we'll do it in all 3 of those. Okay, obviously we wouldn't have them work the whole entire week, and we need to add in prep hours, but once again we'll move those around here in a bit. Okay, last we need to do this third shift, which is 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Okay, so let's just come in. We can come in here, so 7 p.m. to 11 which we're going to switch to 11:30 p.m. Okay, and those are the same, so we'll just go ahead and copy it. So now we've incorporated in all of the needs for the line. We've incorporated in our opening shifts. We've also incorporated in our closing shifts. Okay, the only thing left to do really is now to incorporate in the amount of prep hours. Okay, and we have those all here. So let's go ahead and shrink these down just so we can kind of fit it all on the screen. Okay, so here on Sunday we need to add 4 hours. So how we go about doing that is we want to look at how long they're working already total. So here we can see they're working a 5-hour long shift. Here they're working a 4.5-hour long shift. They're both pretty equal, so let's just go ahead and split the 4 hours between them. So instead of coming in at 3, we need this individual to come in at 1. Instead of coming in at 7, we need him to come in at 5. Okay, so we just took care of that 4. Now we have 7 here. That's a much more significant amount of prep that needs to be done, and we still only have 2 employees, so they're going to have to come in quite a bit earlier. Here, this individual is working a 7-hour shift. This individual is working a 6.5-hour shift. They're pretty short shifts. Here they're going to be much longer. Okay, so 7. Let's look and see if one employee is working more than the other. So 3 to 9, that's a 6-hour long shift. We have a 5.5-hour long shift here. So this is an opener. They're probably paid a little bit more or have more responsibilities. So we would probably give them preferential treatment on the schedule. So let's go ahead and change this individual down to, we probably don't want to really go before noon if we don't have to. So let's go ahead and leave it as noon. So we just added 3 hours. It's a 9-hour long shift. That's good. Now we need to add 4 hours to this shift. So let's have them come in at 2. Okay, we're just going to go through the same process through the rest of the days, get everything on there. Then we're going to have to kind of shuffle around some shifts. Okay, so Tuesday we need 9 hours, but we have 3 employees. Let's just go ahead and add 3. Let's move everybody up by 3 hours. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for Wednesday. It has 3 prep hours as well. Okay, Thursday has 6. Let's just go ahead and split it. And this actually I didn't move up. Let's go to 12. Okay. Friday has 6 hours as well, so we'll just split it once again. So you can see the opener needs to be in by noon to get ready for dinner. That's pretty early. But it's also expected. Okay. We're at 7 here. We could have them come in real early, but that would put them up at 11 hours. So let's just have them come in at noon. Have Gordon come in at noon. Because that would put him over a 10-hour shift, and we don't really want that. Okay, so this, because we're at 7 here, they're going to have to come in at 2. That's still just only a 9.5-hour long shift. Okay, so now we've got all of the hours in there. Let's see if it matches what we had kind of budgeted before. So if we come here and hit equals sum, just add all these up, we can see it's 134.5. Okay, if we come over to the problem, you can see it's 135.5. So we actually made a mistake somewhere and didn't put in the right amount of hours. So let's take a look at what that could be. So I figured out where the mistake was made when we created these, we just made a little error. If you come over here and look at Monday, we put here from 5 to 9, but really they should have been staying through the 9 o'clock hour to 10. So this should have been 5 to 10. So we come on over here to the schedule, and we just need to change this to 10 p.m. Okay, now we have 135.5, which matches what we had here, so everything's done correctly. Okay, let's head on back over to our instructions. So we created a schedule using availability and scheduling guidelines. Next thing we need to do is determine flexible budget guidelines given the budget assumptions and the forecast. Okay, so if we come down here to the budget assumptions, the budget that was created for the year was based on a fixed cost of cook labor expense of $600 per week and a variable cost of 5% as a portion of total restaurant sales, total food sales. Okay, so we just need to come on over here and put in those parameters now. So if we come to the schedule, we can put here the fixed portion. Okay, so that's $600. So let's go ahead and reference it instead of just typing it in. 600. Okay, so let's put here the variable cost, and we'll first put the percentage. Okay, so our percentage is 5%. Looks like I didn't reference it though. So equals 5%. Okay. Now we want to calculate the variable cost as a dollar amount. And that will just be equal to the sales. Okay, we could reference the other sheet. Let's first come up here, pull everything down, put in sales. So total sales. Okay, and if we come over here, we can find our forecasted total sales. Okay, so here's our forecasted total sales by each day of the week. So we need the sum. So let's actually start by typing in sum. And then we'll come on over here and highlight all of the sales. Okay, and let's change that to currency. Okay, if we want to calculate the variable cost now, we just take the total sales and multiply it by our variable cost percentage. So now we can calculate our total labor budget. Which is just the $600 fixed portion plus our variable portion. Okay, so this is how much we should be spending on labor. And in order to figure out how much we are spending, we need to figure out our hours and multiply it by the average pay per hour. So let's go ahead and insert in here a column, and we'll put hourly pay. Okay, and we'll go ahead and paste our hourly pay here. Okay, and next thing we're going to do, we can insert one more column, and we can put total pay, total compensation, something like that, which will just be the $38 multiplied by the $14.75. Okay, one thing we need to take into account is the fact that if we have overtime, we need to be paying out time and a half. So we need to create a little calculation here. So we're going to do that with an if function, and we'll put if. So if 38 is less than or equal to 40, comma, then we'll just multiply those two together, no big deal. If it's not, if it's greater than, we need to do a different equation, okay? So what we'll do there is we'll take 40, because 40 will be at regular pay, and multiply it by the 1475, okay? And to that, we need to add the overtime. So the overtime is found by taking whatever the total hours is and subtracting 40. Okay, and then we'll multiply that by the pay rate, and we'll multiply that by time and a half, or 1.5. Okay, so what is that doing? So it's saying, well, if this figure, if the total hours is less than or equal to 40, then just go ahead and multiply the total hours by the hourly pay. If it's not, which is after the comma here, then take the first 40 hours and multiply it by the pay rate, and then add to that the excess above 40, and multiply that by the hourly rate times 1.5 for 1.5 times pay. Okay, so we're just going to close up our parentheses and hit enter. Okay, you can see here that we haven't adjusted our schedule yet because we wanted to see how much we're paying out currently. So we're going to have some overtime here. Okay, so they've gotten some time and a half there. We can now calculate our total pay. So you can see our total pay is over budget. We're based on what we've scheduled. We have scheduled $1,927 worth of labor, and our budget guideline is $1,809. Okay, part of that is certainly due to the overtime. So let's see what happens if we just kind of shift around the schedule a bit, give some of these hours to some other employees, and see what that does to our schedule. So let's go ahead and take these 3 shifts away here, and we'll give them over here to Mackenzie. So we're going to paste values, and then we're going to go ahead and clear these contents. Okay, the overtime went away. We still have the same amount of hours worked. There is some difference in pay here, but if you look, we're down at $808.40 now instead of being over budget by a significant amount. We're actually slightly under budget. We're pretty much right on with budget now. Okay, now we just need to look at our budget and see if there's anything we want to change. Okay, these 2 employees are working together the whole time. I might want to mix it up a little bit. Maybe I'm fine with that. Let's say that I'm okay with that. We'll just let them work those shifts together, and then we'll have these employees work these shifts together. This employee, as stated in the assignment, is a part-time employee, and they're okay with anywhere from 1 to 3 shifts. These employees are going to prefer more up around full-time. So maybe what we do then is we just take this shift here and give it to Mackenzie. Okay, and we're just going to clear that out here. Okay, so it looks like I'm all right here. We wanted to get Gordon close to 40 hours. He's working 38, which is great. The rest of them are working anywhere from 26 to 33 hours, which is good. And then we have Tate, our part-time guy, working less. This is a pretty slow week for this particular restaurant. If it was a much busier week, then we would see a lot of these peaking out near 40 hours, and Tate perhaps even picking up 2 or 3 shifts. Okay, so now what we want to do is compare the amount of labor that we're expecting to spend based on our schedule to the amount of labor that we've budgeted using our flexible budget guidelines. Okay, so this is our total budgeted labor. Now we're going to just write total scheduled labor. Okay, and we'll just reference this amount here. Okay, and we'll just put the variance. Okay, so we put scheduled minus budgeted. You'll notice that's a negative number. That means we're under budget, which is what we're expecting. So we're pretty much right on budget. We have a $3 variance. If we were not under budget, we would go back and take a look at our schedule and make sure we don't have any overtime. You can see that any shifts, this particular employee is making $14.75, so any shift we take away from him and gives to somebody else is going to result in a lowered labor expense. This is a very valuable employee though, and that's why we're paying them that much, so we want to have them working and leading their staff. So we don't want to just cut by taking away shifts from employees that cost us more. We'll have to, if we need to make cuts, we would need to perhaps have people come in a little bit later rather than come in at 1 here. Maybe we could have this employee come in at 1:30, something like that. We could make little alterations to the budget until we got down below, or we can make little alterations to the schedule until we get down below our budgeted amount. Okay, let's make sure we've gone over everything we need to. Determine the flexible budget guidelines given the budget assumptions and forecasts. Okay, we did that right here in this process. Okay, and then last year, verify that the schedule meets the budget guidelines. And we did that in making sure that our variance between what was actually scheduled and the flexible labor budget was below 0. So we are all set. That concludes this presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to email me directly, and have a great day.